welcome to Chardan's Cleantech Innovation Summit. Before we get started, I'll read a few important disclosures. By participating in this call or in this summit, our speakers attest that they have made Chardan aware of any potential conflicts and will not discuss any material, non-public, or confidential information that they are aware of that may breach their legal, regulatory, or fiduciary responsibilities to any party. So with that out of the way, it is my pleasure to introduce Gary DANNAR, founder and CEO of DANNAR. We're very pleased to have you, Gary.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So I thought perhaps we could kick it off by you providing us with an overview of the company, perhaps speaking to the slide that you shared with us.
Yeah, I wanted to just try to put a visual up here for the attendees that are joining us to just get an idea of what we're talking about, a mobile power station. This product didn't exist, in the past. We started the company 12 years ago with the purpose of bringing electric, all electric type machine together for the commercial industry, the off-road industry. So, this is a machine. I'll just kind of speak to the images. They're very small, but hopefully people will notice they could scan QR codes there to quickly get links of specifications and videos and other information that we'll be talking about. The real small thumbnails are difficult, obviously, to see. So I'll just describe, in a sense, a mobile power station and the use cases that are being delivered to now. So there's really three. If you look at the top, there's three primary sizes, but it really is a universal platform that is configurable, and it starts on the left with no front or back or left or right. It's identical, two sides, 250 kilowatt hours of energy on board that machine. But the purpose is that fleet managers are now able to configure that platform for whatever they want. There's off-the-shelf 250 attachments that are available in the marketplace from very large global distribution partners like Caterpillar and John Deere and et cetera, et cetera. Very universal acceptance of us being able to accept all of those attachments, and whether hydraulic or mechanical, be able to work those attachments on that platform. That platform that you're looking at on the top left, that fits in a parking space. That's roughly about 15,000 pounds. It fits on the same trucks and trailers that pull this type of equipment around, backhoes and loaders and trenchers. So it's a form factor that is very common and universal size, but never before has a platform like this been available. Multi-purpose platform that is able to be configured for winter work, summer work, whatever the work is you're wanting to do this week, it can do that. And that's kind of what you see on the lower, dozen snapshots there, showing all the different attachments in agriculture, construction, mining, material handling. Now you can take this machine and configure it for what you're wanting to do. And in addition, fleet managers, we're talking cities, counties, states, etc. Fleet managers now can kind of take this platform and come up with their own unique configuration that has never existed before, such as a forklift scissor lift combination or a sweeper forklift. So never before has a fleet manager been given so many opportunities to increase their utilization and their productivity and safety, and a very low cost of operation. Now, to just kind of continue, Brian, the center picture at the top shows that just like all those work attachments, you can put a cab on there and treat that cab, heated and air-conditioned cab, plug and play, on and off as you wish. Some work, it might be best for the operator to be on board running that equipment. Other work, it might be best to run that equipment from a remote control, a military grade remote control. So when you configure it like that, you can pick up more batteries, perhaps 375 kilowatts. And then on the far right, you see a machine that is full of batteries, 500 kilowatts. Now, this becomes a machine that can still push and pull and do a lot of mechanical work, but it's full of electricity. So it becomes a mobile charger. Actually, all three can charge. But now 500 kilowatts can start running cell towers for days and weeks, and it can run an average home for 17 days. 500 kilowatts is a lot of energy on board that you can now distribute that energy as mobile charging, mobile grid support, microgrid. So, the vehicle has tremendous versatility of being able to not only work in terms of mechanical work or hydraulic work and carrying materials and so forth, but now it can do work as in providing energy, charging and delivering energy. And so those pictures kind of show, in a sense, the purpose, the use cases, and the early adopters or these large fleets that I mentioned, cities, counties, and states. I said 15,000 pounds for the one on the left. The one on the right is about 20,000 pounds. This is in that envelope of size and weight that the industry is already equipped to move around. And it does drive down the road at 18 miles an hour as well. So that's kind of a quick overview. The company, 12 years old, fourth generation. We've worked in this industry for over 30 some years. And, we now have machines that are being delivered into all different sorts of applications: agriculture, cities, counties, military, air bases, airports, that sort of thing. And with that, I think that's probably all I should speak to on that slide, and then we'll get into some conversation.
Yeah, that was great, Gary. Thanks for giving us that overview and highlighting the versatility of your product. I suppose just jumping right into it, as the industry moves to utilize more EVs, what are your thoughts on how large the addressable market could become over the next 5 years for machinery like this?
Well, the difference with the industry for off-road machinery or work machinery is it's not licensed and registered like cars and trucks and boats and planes and so forth. So it's difficult for most people to appreciate the size of this work machinery globally. It's extremely large. So it will be converting for decades. Quite honestly, there's millions of equipment out there that are going to work every day, making sure cities and county states and FEMA and national parks and railroads and airports, amusement parks, hotels. I mean, there's just no limit where this machinery has been working and maintaining the world for the last 100+ years. But all of that equipment is diesel. And there's an expense with diesel. We know about the environmental piece, but the early adopters that will make a difference in the next 5 years are our cities and our 3,000 counties in this country, but around the world, that they have hundreds and thousands of pieces of diesel equipment that the cost of ownership, the maintenance is extremely high. And that's just the way that's always been. The big plus for EVs are, extremely low cost of operation and a huge maintenance savings. And when this type of equipment goes into a fleet and it's expected to work for the next 10 or 15 years, that daily operation cost is a huge difference. So cities and counties of these big fleets I'm referring to, they really need no sales pitch to understand the value of what we're talking about. This is the kind of equipment that will save them money and bring versatility to the equation. So next 5 years, you'll see, I think, a lot of adoption of the large fleet operators in the world embracing this technology.
It's interesting that you bring up maintenance expense because I think that's often overlooked by people who are owning and operating fleets such as this. I think that feeds in nicely to speaking about call it the product economics for your customers in terms of this type of vehicle versus either a petrol or diesel powered alternative.
Absolutely. You know, the world, these fleets, and I mentioned we've been working with these type of customers for over 30 plus years, the Department of Defense and the national parks and the cities, counties. But they've been asking for a universal piece of equipment for decades. I mean, it's easy to document this on the web, looking at conferences and the top 5 things that fleet managers. And to give you a point of reference, I'll just pick New York and LA. Those are 2 big cities, but there's Atlanta and Orlando and Denver, and there's thousands of cities. But LA has 11,000 pieces of equipment in their fleet that they're trying to maintain. About half of those are on the road, and the other half are like this equipment. So, if you had a 10-year life, that's 500 pieces of equipment that LA is having to switch out every year. They would love to change to something that has a lower cost of operation. And the cities are at a very visible point, so they would love to also be changing to something that is quiet and clean. This is what they strive for the communities that are giving them tax dollars and hoping they buy something that is makes a lot of sense on an ROI, and it's the best cost of ownership, but it's also safe to the environment. So, the maintenance is a big driver, though.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that nicely covers your call it utilitarian, the utilitarian setup. But what about the value proposition for the mobile power station that you referenced earlier?
So, the additional thing that we obviously can speak to this in length, and I won't today with our short time, but the next big point is these fleets that I'm talking about, the early adopters that will make a difference in the next 5 years. There's 3,000 counties, so I mean there's 3,000 collections of equipment out there in counties. They're looking for something that will give them a utilization rate of more than 25%. And you'd say, well, that's ridiculous. Commercial fleets, you don't buy anything unless you can use it at least 80–90% of the time. The cities and many of these fleets don't have that as an option. They need something for the winter. They need something for the summer. They need something for emergency. When something breaks downtown Des Moines, Iowa, they need something that will fix that particular thing. They need a lot of equipment. And what's been available is single-purpose equipment, and it's part of our history and part of the Industrial Revolution, and as the wealth of our country that has come in and provided single-operation equipment. These fleets need one of everything, so that means the utilization rate is 25% at best, and much lower than that. This equipment, the value proposition is, rather than having 5 pieces of single-purpose pieces of equipment that all have an engine and a powertrain and a lot of maintenance and a lot of operation, you can buy one mobile power station and 5 attachments. And the value proposition is the acquisition price of changing over from single-purpose equipments to multi-use equipment pays for itself. It's a very strong ROI just on that alone.
That's right. The enhanced functionality is certainly an interesting aspect to this replacement cycle. So, as the United States moves toward renewable energy, how do you see equipment like this playing into that? And do you think that there'll be a heightened focus from not just the municipalities that you mentioned, but also from corporations and perhaps the military to have off-road electric vehicles such as this?
Absolutely. The recreation markets, the other markets, it is interesting. The catchphrase that is kind of shown up in the last few years is energy as a service. And I think this is fascinating. The commercial world has always been about renting equipment or renting service of some sort, whether it's scaffolding or lighting, machinery. I need somebody to come in and combine my field. It's always been services. And now we have added this new phrase, in a sense, energy as a service. And we're obviously referring to electric energy. And can electric be commercialized and be offered as a service? Of course it can. So there's all dimensions of that. And I think you'll see the commercial markets respond, and they already are, quite honestly, of charging and microgrids, portable microgrids. There's a lot of industry that has in place that there's no grid there now. There has never been. Water pumps, perhaps, that are running on diesel engines. Construction sites that don't have a grid but are running off of fuel tanks. So there's been a lot of energy provided with fuel, and that is now going to get replaced with deliverable energy. A mobile power station is basically energy on wheels. It can be a complete microgrid that's mobile, it can be chargers. This will be commercialized. I'm convinced of it, and there will be a real need for that.
Oh, certainly, I agree with you there. Do you think you could touch upon your partnership with Advent Technologies, perhaps tell us a little bit about how you see that evolving over the coming years and perhaps how it plays into your longer-term business strategy?
I can speak to Advent a little bit here because they're a great example of the several partnerships we actually have in place now. As I mentioned, we've been in the market a little over about 10 years, and we've been delivering these vehicles for the last couple of years. So before we started delivering vehicles, we started having strong commercial partnerships like Advent that bring more value to our customer base, our early adopters into this machine. I can't go into a lot of specifics about the fuel cell technology and what we intend to do. We actually have another fuel cell partner, Nuvera, which is a great company as well. This machine being universal and very flexible, we're able to use different batteries and have different battery partners because there will be different chemistries and different preferences for energy and batteries. And the same thing on fuel cells and our attachments. So we've got a number of working relationships, and that's really the future of all EV equipment that's going to be like this, is the partnerships that bring this through distribution, service, and sales. So I confidentially, with agreements we have with Advent, that's probably all I can say about Advent. But we're excited to be working with them.
Understandable. We're seeing tremendous demand from almost all sectors for electrified tools, components, vehicles. What do you foresee in terms of the U.S. electric grid, in terms of evolution over the next, call it, 5 years or so? What needs to happen to support this shift, this transformation that we're seeing demand for now?
That's a great question, because I think never before has the country faced such a dramatic change in how we deal with energy. It's always been public utilities providing this grid, but if you go to the West Coast and you look at different sectors, the utilities have figured out long ago, and they're already making this shift. It's just going to become more pronounced. And the grid alone, the poles and wires in the plants, the utilities know that they're not going to be able to keep up with the demands. Just impossible. And many of the utilities, have invested heavily into wind and solar and have other forms, alternative forms, whether it be hydro or even nuclear. But the point is, it's going to be a collage of energy systems out there. Microgrids, that term's been around a long, long time, but distributable microgrids or movable microgrids, portable microgrids. And what is going to happen is the privatization of a lot of those. A lot of those grids or a lot of those solutions for energy are going to become partners with the public utilities. And they're going to be making a big difference in our cities or in our rural areas. I think you'll see a lot of privatization of energy come into the market along with the public utilities.
Yeah, I think that's right. So as our time draws to a close, I suppose, what would you like to leave our audience with in terms of, one key takeaway about your company and how you see it evolving over the next, call it 2 years or so?
I think I'd leave the fact that, what they're looking at is not something that existed 5, 10 years ago, ever existed as a diesel equivalent. The EV space has come in and has grabbed a lot of very traditional packaging and traditional configurations, architecture of trucks and pickups and even boats, and now we have planes. Many of those, much of that equipment, a lot of that equipment has been powered with internal combustion type of engines, and there's been conversions going on, changing those powertrains from internal combustion to electric. That's not what we are. What we are is what our early adopters have been asking for 20 years ago, before electric was even part of the discussion. They were looking for a new configuration of a piece of equipment that could give them utilization up into the 80% versus 20%. They wanted something that was safer and higher productivity. What's nice is when we came along to deliver that request, we're just filling a huge void that has been put in the market for 50 plus years. We're filling that void with the right purpose equipment, but it's electric. And that's a win-win for everybody. And electric actually makes it possible.
Well, I think that's a good note to end it on. And thank you very much for joining us and for sharing about your company. We look forward to chatting with you again in the near future.
Thanks a lot, Brian. Really appreciate the time with you.